What is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the BnG podcast, episode 122. And if you're checking us out on YouTube, be sure to comment, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. On the road to 2,000 subscribers, I'm trying to get there before training camp, but I can't do it without you guys' help. More content to come. The Commanders, they trying to be a little selfish with the season ticket holder perks, so I haven't been able to be boots on the ground at OTAs, but I'm working on that. So if I'm not at OTAs, I'm going to be at minicamp in some form because, you know, we got to be boots on the ground, giving you the most raw, uncut, and unfiltered analysis. But thank you guys for coming back to the channel, and to give you a timestamp as I do for all of my episodes. Today is Monday, May 27, 2024. So it's actually Memorial Day. So I want to go ahead and salute all my veterans out there. Thank you guys for your service because without you guys, we wouldn't be able to argue about a simple football team, let alone, do what I do in covering the team on a day-to-day basis. So thank you guys for coming to the channel. As I mentioned, we're at the dog days of the NFL calendar. You know, I always say that the NFL is a 12-month-a-year sport because right after the season ends, you got the draft cycle. You have the off-season where the pre-combine workouts and things of that nature where you're looking at the college prospects and things of that nature. But with the Commanders not having any OTA sessions this week, and they're having only, I think, one more mini camp session before training camp, we're starting to hit the dog days of the NFL calendar where we're not going to be hearing as much content regarding our favorite teams or regarding the NFL as a whole, because this is kind of the only down period that the NFL kind of puts themselves throughout the entire, 12-month period, throughout the entire year. So with that being said, I wanted to have a fun episode. I decided to make a fun episode for you guys today. Some unique content that I haven't necessarily seen anybody else do. So, if you see somebody jocking the swag, you know who did it first. But today, I wanted to give you the three Commanders. I wanted to list three Commanders who need big years in 2025. Three Commanders who need big years in 2025. So the way that I went about, listing these guys, I'm going to go in decrescendo order. So I'm going to go from 3 to 1. Is I just think that if these guys have the impact years, or all of these guys are coming off of years where they didn't necessarily meet the standard of, what they're expected to and what the fans expect them to be as football players. And, this is a make or break year for all of these guys because this is a year that is going to turn the tide for all of these careers. And that's either, these guys, all three of these guys are at a fork in the road in their career. So they're either going to go down the well-traveled, well-pastured path where, they have a lot of fruitful endeavors throughout their career, where it's their break year and they, continue with on their success, or is it going to be, or that's their make year, excuse me, or is it going to be their break year where they continue to have the regression throughout their career and go down the not so bright road where it's a little eerie. It's a little eerie as they come to a crossroads in their career. So yeah, that was the basis for this list. And without further ado, let's get into this list. I promise not to keep you guys for too long. This is not going to be a 30-minute episode. But yeah, gotta push out this content for all of my people. So without further ado, let's get into this list. Number 3 on this list. The number 3 person I have on this list of the three Commanders who need big years in 2024 season is a free agent acquisition that we actually bought in this year. So this will be his first season actually as a Washington Commander. And that is running back Austin Ekeler. Running back Austin Ekeler, he's going into his age 29 season. And I know a lot of my fan base is a lot of diehard guys that, not only care about the Washington Commanders, but care about the NFL as a whole. And not only that, but they care about fantasy football as well. So let's take ourselves back to about 9 or 10 months ago, guys. We were debating if Austin Ekeler should be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL fantasy draft. Now, I know that fantasy football isn't real football, but guess what? They base it off of real life stats. They base it off of real life production. And for the simple fact that about 9 or 10 months ago that we were debating if Austin Ekeler should be the 1.1 pick with the likes of Justin Jefferson and a Christian McCaffrey, that tells you that this guy still has some juice in the tank because this wasn't even a year ago. Most NFL fantasy drafts happened in August where we were debating if he was one of the best offensive playmakers in the entire NFL? Was he one of the best playmakers on that side of the ball in the entire NFL? This is a guy who's a known touchdown scorer, having double-digit touchdowns in the last couple of years outside of the 2023 season. And last year he fell short of expectations. He was very, very far from that 1.1 fantasy draft expectation that we had placed on him in the preseason. So if you did draft Austin Ekeler 1.1 or number one overall in your fantasy draft last year, I feel for you. I really do, because I know you didn't win your league last year. But guess what? He is out for a vengeance this year. And while I don't think that he's ever going to reach that number one overall pick in the fantasy draft type production, because he will be splitting carries with a guy like Brian Robinson, this is a guy that's still one of the more unique playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. He's going into his age 29 season, so he's right at the top of, going down the other side of the hill on that career arc for an NFL running back. And I know a lot of people were talking about it's a highlight going around, and it went pretty viral last season. Where he would look like he was running with a goddamn deep freezer on his back against the Green Bay Packers, topping out at 13 miles per hour. But if you look back in week 1 against the Miami Dolphins, he actually hit 19.6 miles per hour, which goes along on the lines of his averages of his top speed averages that he was hitting in the 2022 and the 2021 season. And why is that relevant? Why is that relevant? Because I mean this when I say this, and it's not just hyperbole, guys. Week 1 was the only week last season that Austin Ekeler played completely healthy. Week 1, he legit played the entire season injured. Now, I know a lot of people it didn't fly on a lot of radars because he missed a couple of games, but he was playing on that ankle. But when he returned from the high ankle sprain that he suffered in week 1 after hitting that 19.6 miles per hour, he suffered another ankle sprain on the other ankle. So this guy was playing on essentially 2 bad ankles for an entire NFL season. Do you know how hard it is for let alone an NFL lineman, let alone a running back who has to shift and cut in every time that he gets the ball? Let alone the likes of a running back like Austin Ekeler, who's a threat out the backfield, who's routing linebackers and safeties up out of the backfield. You can't play with 2 fucked up ankles. I'm sorry, you can't do it. You can't do it. And I know part of the injury comes with age and things like of that nature, and I get it. And that's why I said this is a make or break year for Austin Ekeler, because is he going to go down the line of being injury riddled along the second half of his career? But if not, I think that he can be a huge asset for this Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels led offense. Because as I mentioned, this is a guy that still can top off at 20 miles per hour. He's a check down king. That's one of the reasons why I love the move in the offseason, because no matter who you brought in the draft, Austin Ekeler is a guy that's going to help your rookie quarterback be in that, freeway of passage. If the downfield throw isn't there, throwing the check down, being that outlet for the quarterback. And one of the reasons that I love the Austin Ekeler signing as well, specifically for Jaden Daniels, is because a lot of people that don't necessarily watch film will tell you that Jaden Daniels struggles to throw over the middle. Us over here at Bleeding BnG, we told you that shit was capped a long time ago. But one thing that we did notice is that he didn't throw over the middle as much. And a guy like Austin Ekeler has the ability to win over the middle, to beat linebackers, to beat safeties. And that's somewhere that he excels at. And that's why I think pairing him with a guy like Jaden Daniels will be beneficial to not only Jaden's career, but Austin Ekeler's career as well. And I would be remiss to mention that we only signed him to a 2-year, $11.43 million contract. So that allows us to get this contract off of the books if he has a down year. We don't have to bring him into the 2025 season. But if he hits big and if he gives us any inkling of what he was in the 2022 season and the years prior to that, and even he mentioned he was excited about sharing a backfield with Brian Robinson. It allows him to get some of his legs back. It reminded him of the backfield he shared in his early years in San Diego with Melvin Gordon, or were they the Los Angeles Chargers? Who cares? That's not my squad at that point. But number 3 on our list for the 3 commanders who need big years in 2024, number 3 is Austin Ekeler. Moving on to number two. This is a guy that's very polarizing in Washington Commanders social media, in the Washington Commanders fan circles, and things of that nature. And that's fourth-year linebacker Jamin Davis. Let me tell you why Jamin Davis is in a make or break it year, and I think that he might be the most important guy, or he might be the guy that's in the biggest need of a big year in 2024. Of any guys on the list, I know he falls number 2, but of any guys on the list, he might be the most desperate for a big year. And let me tell you why. Because the team declined his 5th-year option on draft weekend, so Jamin Davis is essentially playing in a contract year. And he's a pick from the former regime. He's a pick from the Ron Rivera era. So that means that Adam Peters, Josh Harris, and those guys, they owe nothing. They owe not a damn thing to Jamin Davis. But this is a guy that while I have been harsh, like we are rightfully so for all of these Washington Commander players, Washington football team players, Washington Redskins, whatever you are, whatever they were at that point, they've given you reasons to critique them as your time as a fan of this sorry-ass organization. I'm sorry to say. But I have been critical of Jamin Davis's play, but I have also noticed some of the flashes that Jamin Davis has shown when it's clicking for Jamin Davis. My only problem is that it hasn't clicked too much, right? And, in previous years, I was questioning, like, how couldn't you do it under the tutelage of former linebackers like Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio? Well, now we know that they were fucking ass hats as coaches. Jamin Davis might as well have been getting coached by you and I out that motherfucker. So that's why I really haven't. Jamin Davis hasn't lived up to the first round pedigree that he had been drafted in the 2021 draft. But that's why I really haven't been too harsh on Jamin Davis, knowing the circumstances that he was dealt with. But they don't owe you anything, my boy. They don't owe you anything. And they showed that when they brought in Frankie Louisville and Bobby Wagner, because those are going to be the two linebackers on the field in sub packages. Now, I don't know how much base defense that we're going to be playing, but I'm not even sure if Jamin Davis is going to be the third linebacker in the base. When they mention more reports coming out of OTAs is that he's been rushing out of the defensive end position in the 3-point stance. Now, while he does have some pass rushing prowess, you can think back to his rookie year when he was the spy on Patrick Mahomes and things of that nature. He was doing it from a stand-up position. He was doing it from an off-ball position. Now, he does have longer arms for an all-ball linebacker. I think he had 33-inch arms or things, or 35-inch arms or something like that. But he's never rushed from a 3-point stance in his life. Now, I know Dan Quinn had mentioned that he loves using, looking at players as positionless, kind of like in the NBA, in the NFL. So Jamin Davis might be his chess piece because we know that Frankie Louisville also has pass rushing prowess coming off of the ball. So maybe he doesn't want to be too redundant with that skill set. So they're just simply seeing what Jamin Davis can do off the edge. Or you can look at it as they're just trying to milk this player for what they can on his last year of his contract because there's some clear athletic talents there. No, I'm not mentioning them in the same light as a player because they have nowhere near the same amount of production. But Jamin Davis does have a similar athletic profile to Micah Parsons, a guy that has played the off-ball linebacker position and the defensive end position in his time in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I'm not saying that Jamin Davis is going to end up being Micah Parsons 2.0. A matter of fact, he won't be. But under the tutelage of Dan Quinn, I think that he can give you some of those, skill sets and some of those traits that he might be the only player, to be honest, on this defense. Because as far as from an athletic standpoint, Jamin Davis is one of the freakiest players on this entire team, let alone this defense. It's like Jeremy Chin is a freak. Jamin Davis is a freak. But we don't really have any more freaks. No Diddy. Outside of like when we had the likes of, Montez Sweat and Chase Young, no matter how bad of a football player I thought that Chase Young was. But that's neither here or there. But this is a huge year for Jamin Davis. As I mentioned, Frankie Louisville and Bobby Wagner are going to be in on the sub packages. But Bobby Wagner has shown some susceptibility in the latter years of his career as a coverage linebacker. So is that something where Jamin Davis can, maybe supersede him or overset or take his chair as the season goes on throughout the season, because as Jamin Davis has struggled covering receivers and things of that, covering running backs in coverage, covering tight ends and things of that nature, I'm going to chalk that up to a lot of the coaching as well, because his technique, his leverage, and a lot of those covering werewolves and things like that was just horrible, and he kept doing it over and over. So nobody was in his ear telling him the right thing. So hopefully with the all-star coaching staff that we have, using his athletic prowess, he can become a better coverage linebacker, where if you get the likes of Frankie Louvu and Jamin Davis as, sub-package linebackers, that's a lot of speed roaming the middle of the field. Also mentioning that you wanted to put the likes of Jeremy Chin running a 4-3 near the line of scrimmage. That's a lot of speed in that intermediate aspect of the field for the defense. So number 2 on our list of commanders who need huge years in 2024, Jamin Davis. And moving on to number 1. It's probably you guys' favorite, because he is a fan favorite. He is a fan favorite. And I was a fan of his, and I still am a fan of his. I was a bigger fan of his going into this season. But my light has dimmed on him a bit, as yours should have as well, if you're being completely realistic and just not one of those delusional Washington Commander fans. And number 1 on our list is wide receiver Jahan Dotson, who will be entering his 3rd year. Let me read Jahan Dotson's 2023 stat line for you. 49 receptions, 518 yards. That's mid for a 4th-round pick, let alone a first. That's damn good. That's not mid. That's mid for a 2nd-round pick. That's damn good for a 4th-round pick. I don't want that production from my 1st-round pick that I traded back for when I could have drafted the likes of a Chris Olave, who's done nothing but put together consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to open up his career. Jahan Dotson had 11 games where he had 3 receptions or less last season. He had 3 games with 0 catches. He had 3 games where he was just out there motherfucking doing cardio. He was out there motherfucking on a Richard Simmons workout plan. Jahan Dotson was some shit last year, y'all. And a lot of y'all refuse to admit it. That's a trend that I'm noticing over there on the Washington Commanders fan circles, Facebook group, whatever the fuck you want to call it. We got a lot of Jahan Dotson truthers over there. And I know what it is. A lot of y'all are Penn State fans. Well, guess what? I'm a Jahan Dotson fan. And because I know how y'all like to go. Oh, dude. Oh, you're just a Jahan Dotson hater. You're just a Jahan Dotson hater. Because you guys act like we can't talk negative about these players when they give you a right to talk negative about them. Well, guess what? If you're checking this out on YouTube, you see that I got a Jahan Dotson jersey in front of me. Because guess what? I was probably a bigger fan than all of y'all going into the 2023 season. If you could go back and check one of my episodes, I said that he might supersede and surpass Terry McLaurin as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Boy, who the fuck was I fooling? So go ahead. Before you go ahead and tell me that I'm a hater of a Jahan Dotson, I don't go ahead and spend money on people that I hate on. Nice try. I'm sorry. I'm just a realist. And I'm not going to let my fandom dilute what my 2 eyes showing me. You want to know what my 2 eyes are showing me? Because I was the first one, and I hate to toot my own horn. No, I don't. I love running victory laps, as y'all know. I was the first one in week 3 last year. Against the Buffalo Bills that put it out in social media. I said, Jahan Dotson out this motherfucker getting clamped. Jahan Dotson out this shit. He is getting clamped. And that was one of the games that he had 0 catches in. Week 3 of the season. So he started off ass last season. And this is where I realized he had a lot of truthers, because everybody was like, dude, you're being harsh on Jahan. Oh, you're being harsh on Jahan. Oh, my gosh. It was a wet track out there. The same wet track that Stephon Diggs had a fucking career day on. The same wet track that Stephon Diggs put up 170 yards on Emmanuel Forbes on. That same wet track. That's when I realized the excuses were going to start pouring in. No, you want me to tell you what it was? Jahan Dotson was weak as fuck last year. And he struggled getting off of press coverage. Teams went back and looked at the 2022 film where he was damn good as a route runner and said, oh, he struggles getting off of the line. Let me press him up. You want to know how I know? Go look at the Seattle Seahawks game last year. Tyreek Woolen had that boy in hell. Point number 2 as to why I know that I'm fucking right. Go listen to his OTA press conference. The first thing that he wanted to talk about working on was his play strength. You want to know why? Because they was boning his ass up at the line of scrimmage last year. They was boning his ass up at the line of scrimmage last year. There were 3 weeks last season with me and Jahan Dotson had the same amount of catches. Shit was just bad. Shit was just bad. For a guy that had a lot of promise after the 2022 season. Y'all see the jersey? I was hyped. I was hyped. I was hyped. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, Jahan Dotson is one of those guys at a career crossroad. Because my question for him, is that a sophomore slump? Was that a sophomore slump? Or is that just who you are? Is that just who you are? And you're going to fall in the long lineage of high drafted Washington wide receivers that just didn't fucking work out. Along the likes of Josh Dotson, Darnarian McCants, Malcolm Kelly, Devin Thomas. Need I go on? Need I go on? Because after the 2023 season, it looks like I might be putting Jahan Dotson's name in that group that I just mentioned. And I really didn't think I would be saying that after 2022. So that'll do it for this episode of the BnG podcast, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think about this list. Let me know who you guys think I missed. Of course, there's a couple of guys that I missed on the list. When you had a season as bad as the 2023 Washington Commanders, there could be 35 people on this list who need a big season in 2024. But let me know how you feel about my list. Let me know some names that you would have put on your list. And mention your top 3 in the comments below, because I love chopping it up with you guys. If you're checking us out on audio-only platforms like Apple Podcasts, like Spotify, please be sure to leave a rating. Please be sure to leave a review, preferably 5 stars, because that's how we finesse these algorithms, so that when you're searching anything Washington Commanders, Bleeding BnG is that #1 content hub that pops up. As always, if you're not following us on social medias, follow us on X at Bleeding BnG, BLEEDIN BnG, or you can follow us on Instagram at Bleeding BnG, BLEEDING BnG. That was a little more proper. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning into another episode. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll be checking in